All right, so again, my name is Caws. I'm a user experience architect here at Infragistics, and the talk is titled Summarizing Infinity, Deciding What Data You Need. So as a member of the design consulting team, we offer a wide range of services to clients. So that includes conducting user research, designing user interfaces, interactions, development, and training as well. And we have an opportunity to do projects across a wide range of industries as well. So this can be exciting, but it's also a challenge because you can do a more traditional project where you're working on... Okay. So, as I was saying, working across multiple industries is something that's exciting, but it's also a challenge because one month you could be working on a more traditional project, designing dashboards for a financial client, and then the next month we've actually been redesigning farming software that was designed to manage planting schedules and resources. So you kind of get both ends of the spectrum when you're working in this profession. And so while a lot of the projects we work on are unique in their own way, most of the clients that we talk to face the same type of problems. They're working with a lot of data, but it's spread out, unorganized, and difficult to work. So I decided to plan this talk summarizing Infinity because I think that it's a task that designers are faced with every day. So, there's so much data at our disposal, and technology is getting to the point where we can build almost anything, but when we have access to everything, I think that deciding what we truly need can sometimes be a challenge. And the overwhelming amount of content and data that is made available today may seem beneficial on the surface, but can easily turn from something that's empowering into something that's distracting as well. So I think users of both business software and consumer applications, they both can fall victim to data overload. And as designers of digital experiences, it's our responsibility to eliminate the background noise and present users with information that enables them to succeed. So for this presentation, I wanted to quickly cover the impact of data that we produce and consume, the benefits of a user-centered design process when identifying meaningful information, and the challenge of managing data in the future. So, dealing with data. So first I want to talk about the Internet of Things. So this is something I'm sure we're all familiar with by now. So as the Internet has become more widely available and technology costs have gone down, there's been an increase in the devices that have been fitted with sensors and Wi-Fi connectivity. So now basically anything with an on-off switch can be introduced into this network of connected things. And Gartner forecasts that about 8.4 billion connected things will be in use in 2017, which is a 30% increase from last year. And that is expected to reach somewhere between 20 and 30 billion devices by 2020, and some estimates put it as high as 50 billion. But so this includes simple sensors in the sense of like wearable devices, but it can also mean jet airliner engines that are fitted with 5,000 sensors each, and that produces about 10 gigabytes of data a second. So as devices and sensors evolve, our data management technology will also have to evolve. So, in addition to the Internet of Things, the data generated by social media and search engines has given birth to the age of big data. So, the next question is for companies, now that we've gathered all this data, what can we do with it? So advancements in analytics technology have helped businesses make sense of the data they collect. For example, German airline Lufthansa is launching an analytics platform this year to make component maintenance and repair more predictive. So, and as a result of that, they were able to save 1% on fuel burn by identifying minor inconsistencies in flight control that weren't flush and had to be readjusted. So this is something that you couldn't pay all your mechanics to go out and check, but because we have sensors embedded in this machinery, then we're able to make that adjustment and benefit from it. And so as more businesses harness the power of big data, we must be aware of the design challenges that it presents. So because there's no doubt that data is empowering, but I want to enforce that it's something that can also be distracting. So in the past, software was created around functionality. So we're providing users with tools, but the limitations posed by technical constraints and budgets. So even though there's been an increased interest in design over the past decade, we still tend to create software that fills the screen with more information than we need to accomplish certain tasks. And we tend to think that presenting as much information as possible will better enable us to make decisions, but sometimes it can also have the opposite effect. So In the same way that we can develop banner blindness from constant overstimulation from advertising, we can also develop data blindness from hours of poring over statistics, staring at dashboards, hoping that it's going to reveal some correlation to revenue that may not exist. And when it comes to organizing data, a screen full of information that's competing for your attention, it tends to confuse users rather than actually inform them. So I took this picture with my dad, so we were watching Fox News, of course, and it was when I was waiting for all the results to come in. So in this case, I realized that news networks, when they're just buying time, they're not necessarily trying to inform you. It's something that they're trying to they're trying to keep your attention, keep you engaged. So if they make everything on the screen a high priority, you're constantly trying to figure out which flashing red statistic is the thing you should be focusing on. So by presenting too many high priority statistics, users will struggle to decide where they should focus. So I'm sure you've all heard of the term analysis paralysis. George was talking about design paralysis before, but I'm sure some of you have gone to Netflix with the intention of watching something, but instead you end up wasting all your time looking for a better option, and you're unable to decide because there's too much to choose from. You don't want to commit to something because there might be a better option, so you end up scanning for the next thing, and you end up spending 20 minutes when you could have watched an episode of pick your favorite show. So being given the freedom of choice and bountiful options seems like it would only make us happier, but there's been research done on the fact that it's been argued to the increasing amount of choices actually decreases the level of satisfaction in the decision that you end up making. So in Barry Schwartz's book, The Paradox of Choice, he examines how people's decisions are affected by the range of choices that they're given. So one famous study that he cites is shoppers at an upscale food market were presented with a display of 24 gourmet jams, and they were given a $1 coupon to buy one if they just simply had a sample. And so on a different day, the same table was set up, except only 6 jams were presented. And it was the same deal. You get a coupon if you just have a sample. So while the larger display attracted more interest than the smaller display, when it came time to purchase, the people who saw the larger display were 1/10 as likely to buy it as the people who saw the smaller display. So, summary there is that while there's no doubt that offering more choices to customers will make them happier, there's a point where increasing their options is going to decrease satisfaction in the choice. So again, with the Netflix example, if you commit to watching a show, you're going to be 10 minutes in saying, is this documentary really worth my time? I should probably switch to something else, and you end up not being satisfied with your experience. So when we think about designing an interface that presents data to users, just because we can fit more information on the screen doesn't necessarily mean that it will help them succeed. So this is my transition to talking about the design process. So in order to avoid creating a tool that distracts rather than empowers, for consulting projects, we follow a design process to ensure that the needs of the user are met. So I'm sure you're all familiar with discovering and research, designing with iterations, and then moving on to development. So this is a more detailed breakdown of that diagram. So what we can see is each role in the project is represented by a color. So we have UX architects in green, we have visual designers in blue, developers in yellow, and then we have a maroon section for testers that we bring in the middle of the process. So as you can see here, there's a thin line of yellow. I'm not sure you can see in the back, but there's a thin line of yellow running along the bottom here to represent the fact that each member of the team is involved at each stage in the process. So if we have the UX architects and the visual designers in the beginning conducting research together, when it comes time to make their own decisions farther along in the process, they don't have to have that handoff where they have to discover a packet of research and look at it for themselves and kind of figure out what it means. They were there in person hearing words coming out of the user's mouth in order to validate the decisions that they made. So we decided to apply that process to an internal case study. So we ran a case study where we created 4 different dashboard designs for roles in the company. So in the top left, we created something for our marketing director. In the top right, we created a dashboard for our financial controller. In the bottom left, for the VP of sales. And then in the bottom right, for our project manager, Justin, sitting up there. So we approached it with the same process that we do for client projects. So in the beginning, we started with the discovery phase. So this is a project overview where we sit down with stakeholders and we identify the business objectives in this project. And so again, the UX architect and the designer are both sitting at the table, and they're able to gather the information together, and it informs the next phase of research, which is context of use. So once the business objectives are understood, then the user needs are defined. So throughout that process, we go through interviews and contextual inquiries, and we find out who exactly are the users, what are they trying to do, what are their tasks, and we also want to get an idea of where do they perform those tasks. So what is the work environment like? What problems are they trying to solve? So in this case, our marketing director, Josh, was looking at information on several screens all the time. He always had different charts that he was pulling up, and we wanted to see if we could try to make his life easier by putting some of that information in one place. Because if he was trying to answer certain questions by jumping between tools, if we could kind of consolidate that process, then we could make his life a little bit easier. So by observing users in their environments, we can gain insight into how they work so that we can design the software that works for them. So it's also important to remember that requirements gathering is not order taking. I think this was something that Jim mentioned earlier, but so users and business stakeholders, they may have an idea of what they want, but sometimes they may not know what they need to get the job done. So they may have this brilliant feature in mind that they know needs to be included in the application, but it's really something that we have to kind of translate in the process of requirements gathering. So once all this input is documented, the interaction design phase begins. So this is when the interaction the UX architect, begins this translation process. So information architecture is decided, so how the content is organized and labeled. Interaction design is specified how the users move through and interact with the system. And then the interface is designed, and the controls, the content, and the navigation put in place. And I think that's Kevin's hand pointing at the document. But so once all the user workflows are mapped out, we take all the information that they use to answer questions, and we prioritize those questions. So when they meet with, and the executive team, they get asked, like, what is the health of the business? That's the first question on their mind when the marketing director walks in the room. So we said, okay, let's make that's the most obvious thing that you can see when you look at this dashboard. So we take these key questions and we prioritize them, and then we use that to start to lay things out on the screen, even if it's in this block format or in just a casual sketch. So if we can establish a hierarchy for screen layout, then we can start to build a tool that does the job. So a nice way to kind of get ideas across is to sketch them in very low fidelity. So this is something that you can share quickly and get some feedback. Like, is this something that would help you in do your job? So this is the marketing dashboard in a very early conception. This is another horrible sketch of the project management dashboard before we started to actually put it into a prototype form. So we knew we had these certain pieces of the application that we wanted to inform us, like, okay, here are the resources that you have available, here are the tasks that have to be done on the project, and here's the life cycle of the project, and how can you connect all of those things. So we created a quick prototype in Indigo Studio with really simple interactions, and we used this to explain our idea before going forward. So at this stage, you can show a static screen, and it would have been enough to get some feedback and go and make some changes as just as a sketchbook would. But you can create an interactive prototype and put it in front of them and allow them to kind of scroll through different things and allow them to kind of dive deeper than they would to just looking at a screen. You can gain a lot more feedback. And so, based on using this simple prototype, he gave us some feedback, and then by our next meeting, we created something that was a little more high fidelity. It took a little more work to get to this point, but based on the feedback we received from the original concept, and the next meeting we had, we were able to present this to him, and then he was able to play around with an idea that he had suggested only a couple days before. So I think it's really interesting to kind of have someone say, like, oh, I feel like I could use this sort of functionality, and then they're able to actually use something that they had thought of themselves in the prototype that was created. So in the same meeting, we had a developer sitting with us who was able to use this as a proof of concept. And so once the layout was approved, so he began planning the controls that he would use in the implementation process. And our original designer took that prototype and started to create a mock-up in Photoshop. And so once that was complete, the dashboard was recreated using our jQuery controls, and it was loaded with realistic project data. And for the final product, we were able to make 4 separate data control samples that are available on our website if you want to check them out for yourself. But all these dashboards are things that you can play with and download, and it was really cool to be able to apply the design process to something internal using the controls that we sell in order to provide a tool that services someone in a specific role. So overall, the design process enabled us to determine what information to show and how to show it. I'll let some people take another picture of it who like that graph. So I'll end here by talking quickly about designing for the future. So in order to avoid creating a tool that distracts rather than empowers for consulting projects, sorry, that was the notes from a wrong slide. So start again. How many people have used virtual reality before? Okay. So I wanted to say that I think that as that technology becomes more sophisticated, it's kind of in its infantile stage now. There's only a handful of people in the crowd who use it, but I think that as that technology advances, we're going to have to consider how it will impact traditional design standards. Because we used to lay elements out on the screen, and we use the placement of those elements around the borders as a means of hierarchy and priority. So we're used to seeing things through that kind of window on our desktop, but in virtual reality, it's an immersive experience, so you can't feel like you're looking through a window. We're going to be providing controls that have a certain hierarchy. It's something that we're going to have to rethink entirely. So, because when the canvas to design on becomes immersive, we really have to rethink how people are going to be interacting with this data and visualizing it. So, we have to consider something's going to be useful rather than just a flashy experience where you can throw a bunch of data on the page and have someone say, like, oh, that's really interesting, but how is it going to help me actually do my job? So I want to use this to advocate a UX design process being applied whenever you're designing something, because it's really important to find out what the user is trying to accomplish, and then you need to find out what data provides that answer, and then what is the best way to answer that question with a visual artifact. So with all the possibilities available to us as designers, I wanted to ensure that we are empowering users and not distracting them with the things we designed. So I know that was really quick, but thank you.